Thank you, everybody, for coming. Good afternoon. My name is Karen von Fey, and I'm the chairperson of the Fellowship Fund Committee. And we are the organizers of this fourth iteration of the Ruptured Histories webinar, in the shadow of Moscow, uncomfortable heritage in post-Soviet art, public space, and museums. Now, the Ruptured Histories project aims to provide a platform for various views, various global contexts in the discussion around decolonization. And to do this, we invite speakers such as artists, art critics, academics, and curators from different geographical and cultural vantage points. So today's presentation takes the form of a moderated discussion on the difficulties faced by artists in post-Soviet regimes and their attempts to engage with issues related to cultural memory. Before we begin, I just want to start by thanking all the members of the FFC who've worked to put this presentation together. And in particular, thanks to Danielle Perrier, Arkadiusz Poltorak, and Malgorzata Kazimierzak for helping to recruit the speakers that you will be hearing today. And of course, many thanks to the speakers for making themselves available to discuss these important topics. Two reminders to everybody before we begin. This webinar, as you've heard, will be recorded and it will be published in the ICA YouTube channel within the next few days. So it'll be online. I also want to remind you to keep your microphones muted. The audience for the duration of the webinar and the speakers when you're not speaking. If you have questions, please could you write them in the chat box, and we're going to gather the questions together and ask the speakers towards the end of the presentations. Also, if you would like to put off your video, if you're not speaking, you're welcome to do so. I'm now going to hand you over to Arkadiusz Poltorak, who is the moderator for this discussion. And from now on, it's up to him. Thank you and enjoy. I hope you all enjoy it.
Thank you, Karen. I will add a few more words to kind of bring us closer to the overarching theme of today's webinar. We've gathered here to discuss the issue or plural issues surrounding uncomfortable or contentious heritage. So a heritage that might be difficult to integrate with one's own sense of historicity, experience, or identity. But at the same time, it actually proves quite difficult to disown as well, at least at times. Discussing this important issue, we will focus on case studies from contemporary art and cultural practices, including curating, and art criticism in the post-Soviet countries. The idea for this webinar came to us in the Fellowship Fund Committee at ICA from a particular place, a place of war, that is the present-day Ukraine, where the war efforts are accompanied by certain shifts or ruptures in the local symbolic universe, including but not limited to defacement of or toppling of Soviet monuments, with a significant continuity being asserted between the power of today's and the Soviet times Moscow. It was clear to us that to discuss those issues, we need to discuss them among people with first-hand experience of the matter at hand. And hence, we welcome the wonderful guests from Ukraine, the artist and activist Nikita Kadan, and art and cultural heritage researcher Yevheniia Moliar. Welcome. With us are also three guests from other parts of the former East, whom we invited to discuss the theme with us, so we can get a broader perspective, a broader view of what it means to struggle with the contentious heritage of the Soviet Union and how the ongoing war efforts in Ukraine affect cultural memory in various parts of what used to be an incredibly vast geographical and political realm, that is the so-called Eastern Bloc. We cannot really speak of their experiences now in a universalizing way, if we ever could, really. So please welcome Sabina Shikhlinskaya, artist and freelance curator from Azerbaijan, Lali Pertenava, an art historian, writer, and curator from Georgia, and as I've heard, a person who's very much involved in founding AIKA Georgia, which we are very happy about. And Kinga Siewior, a cultural heritage researcher from Poland. The webinar, as Karen already said, will have two parts. One is moderated and the other one, well, it will also be moderated, but it will be basically Q&As. Please leave your questions or comments in the chat box once again. I will read your questions or comments towards the end of our meeting. The first moderated part, the discussion will take about an hour, maybe a few more minutes, and then we will proceed to the Q&As. Once again, please mind the meeting is recorded, and please keep, this is an address to all of you, but the speakers, keep your cameras and mics off. So now let's commence with the discussion. And the first round of questions I would like to ask you, they are actually requests for self-introduction, you could say. I asked all of the participants to prepare one or maybe a couple of projects that they could share with us, projects from their own practices that touch upon the issue of contested or uncomfortable heritage or difficult heritage. We will also discuss the vocabulary later in their own practices. If I may ask Yevheniia Moliar first to tackle this challenge, could you tell us about an initiative or two in your practice that confronted the problem of unwelcome heritage in Ukraine? This is the prime subject of your research, actually, as far as I'm concerned. But it also, maybe if you could tell us how your research travels around media and the wide world, we would be very grateful. I give the floor to Yevheniia.
Thank you very much. Thank you for introduction and to inviting me to this workshop. So I'm an art historian. I'm originally from Kyiv, and now I'm temporarily based in Berlin and working on my PhD thesis in Technical University. So my topic is preservation of cultural heritage, Ukrainian Soviet cultural heritage. And my first initial idea of my PhD was about some movements and projects in the context of preservation such heritage in Ukraine. But last year I faced with a situation when I was forced to change my topic significantly because I had realized then there is no perspective of preservation of such heritage in Ukraine anymore. And now I'm mostly writing about the phenomenon of decommunization and some artistic reflections on this phenomenon. But mostly I was working as an art historian and as a member of DIY initiative, self-organized initiative DND. Since 2015, we were gathered together with artists, activists, architects around actually the topic of decommunization, and we started to research how this process and this phenomenon changed our cities, our society, our cultural heritage. But one of our main aim of course, it was the preservation of material heritage, especially the architecture and mostly the monumental art in the public space. But also we were working a lot with museums and museum collections, so let's say about the 10 years we have been working on researching, studying the Ukrainian Soviet cultural heritage, and we always appeals for the recognition of this heritage as a valuable heritage and first of all as a Ukrainian heritage, and emphasizing its artistic and historical value, because in this situation, when the Soviet period has been always a very complex and emotionally sensitive topic for Ukrainians, because it was and it is a subject for Kremlin and Russian propaganda manipulation. Especially, it was intensified after the annexation of Crimea and the beginning of the Russian war in Ukraine in 2014. And of course, after the full-scale invasion in 2022. So the problem is the Russian propaganda has specifically claimed the Soviets, all Soviet as Russian. And as a result, the Soviet is no longer perceived as a Ukrainian past, but mostly as a Russian presence. That's why, obviously, Ukrainians ready to get rid of such heritage. And of course, now in Ukraine, it's even very difficult to discuss such question, because it's very painful for Ukrainians. And even I was defended all these monuments and objects in Ukraine many years before, but now I couldn't even say something against, because I can imagine how it could be painful for Ukrainians, because this association with Soviet and Russian is so strong. So now we need to deal somehow with the problem of and the issue with about reappropriation this heritage. So we need to prove that Soviet is not Russian. The Soviet heritage is a heritage of it's a phenomenon which combined by Ukrainian Soviet heritage, Georgian Soviet heritage, Lithuanian Soviet heritage, etc. So it's a similar but different phenomenon, because under the every of each of that phenomenon, and there are special local schools, there are special architects, special artists, and special local tradition on which the this international Soviet tradition was based. So I have what is the time frame of my presentation?
It's okay. I think if you want to share with us some documentation of your project.
Yeah, I would like to show just few photos. Just as an example of our activities. So as we try to use a different approach to work with this complicated or difficult heritage, or even non-obvious heritage. So the one of them, it was a project in Memorial Museum of Sergei Prokofiev, is a famous Soviet composer, but of course now his presence as a Russian composer, but he was born in Ukraine, not far from Donetsk, and was born and grew up there until his 19th birthday. And the last Soviet period, the special memorial museum was organized there. And the museum has a beautiful exhibition based on Prokofiev's detailed autobiography. However, in 1980s, not all aspects of the composer's life suited to Soviet ideology, and the exhibit doesn't mention his complicated family history, known as the Prokofiev case. This term often used in the Soviet legal practice because it's related to the fact that composer married 2 times, and it was some trick in Soviet legal practice, and so somehow his marriage was cancelled, but after that, to his wife became his widow. So it's quite complicated case. But other point was to show this this part of his family history in his memorial museum, because the Soviet ideology was ignored this fact, because one of his wife was a Spanish singer, Lina Kadina, and she was repressed by Soviet authority and exiled to Siberia. So that's why it was not really suitable for Soviet museum to show such things in the memorial museum of famous Soviet composer. And our idea was to include and to give back this this part of his story to his memorial museum. And so for the main idea as for us is so including this hidden previous in Soviet time, the hidden history, and make it visible. It's like one way of decommunization, and it even better to show it, but not to hide and repress, as unfortunately the official politics of decommunization now in Ukraine. It's unfortunately often used the same methods as Soviet era censorship. And also I would like to show the other museum. It's a very good example of this, how the museum works with Soviet era exhibition and the Soviet era narratives for showing a new understanding of Soviet history. So the museum of now it's named a Museum of Propaganda. Originally it was a memorial museum of Nikolai Ostrovsky, also the famous Soviet writer. And the exhibition in this museum was created also at the end of Soviet period, at the time when the Soviet ideology was already beginning the period of stagnation, and the time characterized by certain exaggerations. That's why this exhibition of this museum, from our perspective from that time, it looks like a detailed instruction for glorification. So it's like a manual about how to turn a simple guy into an old Soviet hero using a media like a newspaper Pravda. And nowadays the museums, the museum researchers conducted a very good archival work and found and showed all the differences between the real facts of the life and of the biography of Mykola Ostrovsky and the this myth which was showed in the original exhibition in the late Soviets. For example, the official version of Ostrovsky was born into a poor family, but in the poor family in the village, but in a small photo in the exhibition, they emphasize then his parents' house was actually very big and not really poor, either rich. And the museum researchers tried to point at these differences between two narratives, unfortunately, and there are a lot of other points. I don't now stop on them, but unfortunately, this approach is not always obvious to our officials, and mostly officials perceive decommunization in Ukraine just as a guide to destruction. For example, last year, this amazing sculpture in front of a museum. So, by the way, I would like to say that the museum and the amazing museum exhibition was designed by famous Ukrainian artist Anatoly Haidamaka, and the sculpture, the sculptural portrait of Mykola Ostrovsky, was created by Ukrainian Soviet sculptor Valentin Znaba. But last year, the local authorities decided to dismantle these statues, and it was voluntary decision of local deputies, and instead of the situation, despite the situation, then this monument is museum, official museum exhibit at the monument was located on the territory of the museum, and this museum, after they renamed as Museum as Propaganda, so their main goal to show how the Soviet propaganda had worked then. And unfortunately, they destroyed partly this monument, this figure of Mykola Ostrovsky in front of museum, and so that's why this action showed us the communization now started not only to deal with some object in public space, but also this very dangerous form when the communization touched even the exhibits of a specialized museum. Yeah, so now maybe I will stop at this, and if we will discuss later, I would like to add.
I think there will be ample space for that, and I've seen some comments or questions already appearing in the chat. I would like to now ask Nikita to share his practice and his experience, which in a way deals with very, very similar issues, I believe, or maybe I'm wrong. Nikita, are you here with us?
So, I'll briefly tell about few works of mine from the show I had in a Modern Art Museum in Łódź in Poland in 2022. The show, which was called The Fire and the Ashes. One of main directions of my research is political history of Ukrainian modernism. which includes political aspects of today's perception of the works from 1920s. As you may know, Kharkiv was the first capital of Soviet Ukraine and the place where communist politics and politics of Ukrainization, they somehow coexisted and even formed a kind of united political machine. And the history of Kharkiv of 1920s, the history of Kharkiv avant-garde is such a clear illustration of the possibility of Ukrainian communism. Because now we still have something called politics of decommunization, like politics of Ukrainian state anti-communism, which equalizes communism with Russian imperialism. And there's such a weird game of non-distinction, which leads to like abandoning, neglecting, and in fact erasing quite a big part of Ukrainian 20th century heritage. So I worked a lot with images related to Ukrainian 1920s, including this monument to Lenin's epoch by Vasily Yermilov, famous Kharkiv constructivist and avant-garde artist. And this type of reconstructions became parts of the new works which are exhibited, and the Yermilov monument was combined with 1960s furniture, which contains certain like traces of earlier modernism of 1920s, but in a reduced form. 60s like 20s light, reduced 20s, weakened 20s, the war called domesticated enemy. But I'll ask to show the next two images now. And next one, please. Oh, the next, please. Okay. This is also a reconstruction of Yermilov's so-called monument to the chairman of planet Earth. It's a monument which never was erected, which never was realized on practice. And Ukrainian artist Vasily Yermilov dedicated it to Russian futurist poet Velimir Khlebnikov, who visited Kharkiv 2 times, and actually once he spent some time in mental health hospital, avoiding forcible drafting to Anton Denikin's army, a Russian White Army which fought both against Bolsheviks and against Ukrainian People's Republic, like Ukrainian National Liberation Forces. And Khlebnikov spent several months in this hospital, and several people from that time, like Kharkiv creative youth, they attended him because they knew that he's a famous avant-garde poet. And they wanted to have some kind of dialogue with him, and he was so open. And he influenced several of them, like including Sinyakov sisters, Boris Kosarev, who lived a long life and was a professor in Kharkiv Art Institute and somehow connected Kharkiv art generations, and Vasil Yermilov. In few years, Yermilov became like #1 representative of Kharkiv visual art avant-garde, but by that time, he stood on a bit more moderate artistic positions. And while he was in dialogue with Velimir Khlebnikov, he was in fact under influence. And after Khlebnikov's death in 1922, Yermilov made this drawing of golden sphere standing on a red cube called Monument to the Chairman of Planet Earth. Khlebnikov was self-proclaimed chairman of the planet Earth, and actually he proclaimed himself to be such an important figure in Kharkiv Municipal Theater. So it's a story about some strong connections of Russian and Ukrainian cultural context, not through some colonialist model, not through oppression, but through the creative dialogue of artists. And I ordered the sculptural model of this never realized monument. It was placed in an abstract cabinet, actually designed by Lisitsky, other representative of early Soviet avant-garde connected both to Soviet Russia and to Ukraine. During some short period in Kiev, Lisitsky was quite close to Jewish cultural movement Kulturliga. And also there was a VR, when sculptors who propose project of monuments for public competition today, they do some VR animation of the monuments placed at the environment. And we made this VR with this monument built in Kharkiv now. On the background were devastated buildings, and all the monument was surrounded by rubble left after Russian missile strike. Now I could try to share the screen with this image.
I am not sure if it's available on the website, or are you going to share it?
No, I want to share it from my iPhone. Sorry, I had to do it from hotel with certain problems with internet, so excuse me for connecting from iPhone, but I have no other options. Okay, and now I share my screen. you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll send you these images and you could put it on projection while you have Q&A.
You should be able to do it now. I turned off the presentation.
Okay.
Something doesn't seem to work, but maybe you can send it in the chat.
Yep. Done. Now you have it. Do you see it now?
No.
No.
Unfortunately, we don't. But you can send it to me via email if you have the now we see.
Okay. So this is was a VR on the screen present also in abstract cabinet. So in fact, the work is a facsimile of the original Yermilov sketch. The sculptural model and this VR animation. There is an obvious question behind. Like, are we able to read Russian poetry under Russian bombs? And what will happen with history of art, history of culture, when we exclude some inconvenient, uncomfortable chapters from the past? Like you might know that in today's Ukraine, like canceling of Russian culture is like it's kind of informal law. And for example, if like the headline Ukrainian artist proposed to build a monumental Russian poet in Kharkiv, if this headline will emerge in some Ukrainian cultural media, like the scandal would be enormous. Anyhow, I'm planning to show this project at my sort of show in National Art Museum next year, and like let's see what happened. But the discussion around such things as like Khlebnikov Yermilov story and many others is impossible in a current Ukrainian public field. But with excluding chapters, we lose like logical continuity.
Thank you, Nikita. And
yeah, and it seems that I have to finish that. My like introduction was a bit too long, but yeah, the title of this work is the project with postponed implementation. Thank you.
And we are not leaving the subjects you touched upon completely. We will have a postponed return to them in the next round in a few minutes. I would like to now move to Sabina Shikhlinskaya, who has also extensively worked with the subject of Soviet heritage, both as an artist, as a curator, in a different geographical and cultural context. So Sabina, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Andreas, for the introduction. And thanks to the organizer for the invitation, because it's a really important subject for all my artistic activities as an artist and as a curator. So seeing all these historical transformations which coming through all my life, so being born in the Soviet Union and to study as a young artist in the Soviet art institution lately, and not accepting the official ideology in art as the social realism, not accepting being young artist. So from that time, actually started let's still not only my struggle with the Soviet ideology, but the idea to understand where the pressure comes to pressure comes from the politic and ideology, from the imperialistic or colonization ideas, where it comes to culture, and where the space for the freedom of the artistic expression. And lately, when the Soviet Union was collapsed and Azerbaijan became independent state, country, I started to research and to see and to reflect what kind of attitude to this past, to this 70 years of the colonization. So I'm not sure of the term. It's still in my country not officially. We have no any official terminology, and as I see the easiest way was chosen as a maybe to erase this historical period, to hide or to forget even. So it's easy with the public space where the sculptures of Lenin, Stalin, and let's tell latest leaders of the Soviet, like Brezhnev, etc. So all the sculptures, monuments, they were demolished. Architecture of the city of the Baku, capital of Azerbaijan, architecture which belonged to the Soviet time, like special architecture types of the Stalin time and the lately post-Soviet modernism. It's a kind of constructivism in architecture. All these periods in architecture, they were demolished as well, because Azerbaijan is not a poor country, being oil exploration country where everybody knows that we have enough money for such small country. And of course, the architectural boom exists. And instead of these layers which could show the mirror of the Soviet periods, we demolished, destroyed, changed the facades. So visually, it's disappeared. Like the Soviet Union was not exist. Like first independence of Azerbaijan in 1918, and the second independence which we got in the 1991. So like this period between 70 years was forgotten. So it became the area where I started to research. So I became like obsessively searching how to keep this memory and how to deal with this. I like this what is written in the concept of today's webinar, difficult heritage. I'm absolutely accepting this term. It is difficult heritage, but it is the heritage. It is our roots. We were not choosing them, and because of this, being artist and being curator of visual art, I will come to the visuality. So I will show now images of the project, which is about very interesting place. Just a second. It's okay. It's can everybody see? Hello?
Not yet, not yet.
Yes. Not yet?
You have to click share. I think there's a double click there.
Okay. Now I will try.
Choose the screen.
I'm doing this. Now it's okay now.
It's perfect. Yes.
So the place which is you can see. Okay, better like this. So you see the island. You see the island and the three images of the. Okay, so this one, which is now on the screen, it is the.
Now we see
But we
actually a
can't
blank-
see.
Now we see a blank screen. We saw something before, so maybe exit the presentation mode and then we will see.
Mhm.
Because we saw it in the beginning and now we see only a blank screen. I can also share it if you want.
Just a second. So now it is no my images.
Now there's no image.
Yes, but I
click
would
the
like to
full
do it
screen?
myself because
Did you click the full screen mode in the Windows app?
okay, I'm making share.
Now we see a photograph of a ruin.
Yeah, but unfortunately it moves as a slideshow, which I don't want it to move in this. Okay, so we see the image, yes?
Yes, now we see the island.
Okay, but it's all time jumping. Unfortunately goes as a slideshow, and I don't know how to stop this situation.
Oh, now just don't click the slideshow and then we
I will not
see.
click the slideshow, yes.
Yeah.
So this is island from where we can see the Baku, capital of Azerbaijan, with the TV tower, and the island architecture, as you see, looks abandoned. I show now you the island itself, so you will understand. So this is the island, but the name Nargin, it is like about 7-8 kilometers from, even less from Baku. Possible, actually, is it maybe to swim there, but it's not possible because the island from the end of 19th century, it is the prison, lately Soviet military base, in the between concentration camp of the Stalin regime, and right now it's still on the protection of the Ministry of Defense. So what is the meaning of artist and the creator of visual art to be interested of such a military place? So very big meaning, because this is started as a part of the empire idea of the Russia to colonize Caucasus. So in the end of the 19th century, by the Russian imperator king, it was decided to make the second big prison colony in Caucasus, and it was done in this island. Sorry?
All good, all good.
All good, okay. So it was built the lighthouse here. It's the end of 19th century. And actually, island is not only the reason that it was a prison, it was also the place to protect it, also the like gate, Baku on the Caspian Sea, and the biggest island and only one island in front of the let's say this is Bay, Baku Bay. It's also the protection of the city, and the Baku is important because of the oil industry, which started oil exploration started in the end of the 19th century. Because of this, of course, to keep protection on such place was important for the empire, who could use this natural economical resource for their goodness, of course. And in the First World War, a lot of prisoners, like 2,000 Turkish prisoners, they were arrested and they were killed in this island. Lately, German and Austrian, they were prisoners because they were people who living in Azerbaijan because of the different reasons, economical reasons in Germany. The big German community moved from Germany to Azerbaijan. They also were living there. Anyway, so many layers of the different stories, different historical situations. And in Stalin time, in the 30s, these Germans and Austrians, they were imprisoned, and they were also kept in this island. They were killed. They died there, they were not buried there. So the island full of it's like a cemetery. And lately, it's a very good idea for Soviets, I think very much suiting to the communistic ideology, to make on such a bloody place, to make the military base. And again, it was the place where they protected the sea roads to Baku, because in the Second World War was the special interest to Azerbaijan because of the petrol, because of the oil. So Soviet military base, and before, as I told, Stalin regime camp. So now, after Soviet Union collapsed, the island became abandoned. So Soviets left. Azerbaijani state didn't decide what to do there. And lately, after 10 years of our independence, big money came from the same oil, and great decision came to some people who are leading the culture in my country. They decided to make in this bloody place, to make not a Disneyland, but something like as you see on the photos, Dream Island project was done. It is just the idea what to do there, with the shopping centers, with the entertainment, different activities. And when I learned this, of course, I understood that all this tragic memory, which should be researched, which should be kept, which should be memories should be given to such a tragic place. And also, it's not only the it's, yes, of course, it's a huge tragedy, but the both states there, it's kind of artifacts. It's like layers of the human stories, because on the broken buildings everywhere, it's written different, we can find there different titles. For example, this photo, Failure year 35. It's I started to research, and after I learned that this is from the German community, was some person, and maybe his family still doesn't know what happened with him. He disappeared. Maybe you can ask me how me and my colleagues, how we could be in this island if it is still on the Ministry of Defense protection. How we are doing there some art of some project, somebody making performance, as you see. So illegally, we did it illegally. So I was brave enough to start this movement, and some of the friends, artists, they who also interested of this kind of specific art, site-specific art based on the disappearing historical facts, to reflect through this, which is actually history is very much common to not only to post-Soviet, also to the let's say to the Western world. as well. So all the prisons and this kind of places, they have some similarity. Through this, we can understand which movements in the society were repressed in the different historical periods. So the artist from France, Brice Mathieu, the artist from Lithuania, Oleg Tilbergs, and the artist from Azerbaijan, Chingiz Babayev. So they followed me and the Georgian co-curator, Ketevan Kordzahia, and we illegally stayed in the island more than a week, creating the installations, which were just documented. Of course, the island is under the protection of the soldiers, but they and abandoned now, but they understood that the artists it's not a danger, so they let us to make our, for their opinion, crazy things. And now I couldn't publish this project, but now it's more than 20 years after we did it, so I feel last years I feel free to show this and to announce that yes, illegally we did it. First 10-15 years I was actually scared to demonstrate this, and like this it looks. Now it looks, I don't know how it looks because I couldn't be there again. And to present this this idea that the difficult heritage actually should be not forgotten. It should be researched, and it should be presented from the different ways, from the cultural and artistic reflection as well. Following this idea, I decided to make a virtual project. It was in 2010. It's a virtual gallery where exists the also the, I will try to show this. Okay. I will try to now go to this virtual gallery.
It's one of the bookmarks, and you have now opened Zoom, and it's art steps next to it.
I left.
No, just move to the to the top of the screen.
Yeah.
No, it was the right. It was at Chrome.
Okay. No, but I kept the link, and now I'm trying to find it.
Well, maybe we can also try to show it a little bit later, so we can.
Okay. But if I have a few seconds, maybe I can try. Okay, let's do it later if you think it's better. So I tried to prepare 2 virtual exhibitions. And the last one, it was done in 2024 recently, and this is the virtual museum of the non-existing museum of the history of island, of the Nargin Island. And in this exhibition, anyone can see the materials which I collected from the open archives, from the open media, and from my projects with my colleagues, which were done in the 2003, 2004 in the island. Yeah, so still I should try to show this virtual museum, or you think
I think
Arkady's
we can try if you could we could maybe now move to Lali and then you can try to activate it and we will show it later
Okay, good.
during the Q&As. I think that's the smartest way.
Okay.
So can I pass it over then the floor to Lali? Lali, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm trying to adjust video. First of all, thank you, of course, for invitation to this very interesting and how to say challenging session. Challenging in terms that I should connect presentation with Soviet heritage legacy and contemporary political and social situation that is very much influenced with happenings in nearby countries, and especially with this horrible war in Ukraine started by Russia. So my presentation, I will share it now with you. It's mostly about Soviet and post-Soviet architecture and its influence on post-Soviet social situation in Georgia. Just a moment. Share the screen. Oh, okay, sorry. So about the colonization, I even don't know how to start and what to mention about, because you know, in nowadays Georgia, we still have a museum of Stalin, and it's the most profitable museum among other museums in Georgia. However, we are like an ancient country with lots of different museums and cultural heritage settings. It's strange that Stalin Museum still gets such popularity, and not among local residents, but also international ones. I have not put the museum photo in the presentation, and actually, there were several attempts to reconstruct the museum or to reconceptualize the museum. One of the attempts was to add the building where there would be presented repression cases, but it's still not realized because it's always there is this justification that Ministry of Culture is avoiding responsibility not to have problems with local people where the Museum of Stalin is, and where the Stalin is also considered as an important and powerful person who affected positively development of Georgia. Unfortunately, this is a reality, and in this reality, it's not strange that we still suffer in Georgia from highly from propaganda and from the new recession of kind of Soviet censorship on culture right now in this epoch, and actually the government from 2012 tries to renew the policies and laws that were quite active during Soviet Union and that actually worked well to censor and to prohibit certain cultural and creative freedom in the country. So like our main square, all my photos are from Tbilisi, from the center, from the capital of Georgia. And this is a Freedom Square in the center of Tbilisi that was created during the Tsarist period in 19th century. It was imperialistic part of Tbilisi, First, it was called during Sovietization. The first monument erected on the square was Lenin Monument. That was replaced by Stalin Monument, and now it's replaced by St. George Monument. That is made by oligarch Georgian Russian artist Ruptured. This is this type of mixture of different layers of different narratives that is imposed over contemporary Georgian culture and social life. That is mixture of post-totalitarian, semi-authoritarian and dictatorship mode. Somehow that local people local artists and cultural workers are trying to avoid, but it's not quite successful, I would say, for nowadays. Actually, I have some photos from Soviet architecture in Tbilisi, but I don't want to impose you with on you as a Soviet legacy. Just to scroll how development of architecture continued during Soviet time and how it affected later post-Soviet realities in Georgia. So actually, I want to focus mostly on this building that does not exist anymore in Tbilisi. And it has like very symptomatic history for Soviet architecture and Soviet heritage. Concerning regarding Soviet heritage, before 2012, during this Rose Revolution period, there was a very strict law imposed on the Soviet heritage saying that no, as also in Ukraine and maybe other post-socialist countries, that no Soviet symbolics should be exposed in public spaces. So since that this the construction of Soviet monuments and buildings started, and there was certain group of heritage protectors. One of among them, I also was protecting Soviet heritage, who claimed not to deconstruct, but to somehow take care or deconceptualize or maybe replace. But actually, we did not see much replacement of Soviet monuments. Mostly they are either deconstructed, demolished, or protected in a way. So, but mainly interesting fact about this process is that it's not demolished because ideology or Rose Revolution laws, but it's basically deconstructed and demolished because of the commercial utilities and commercial use. The buildings are disappearing, or monuments are disappearing because of investors who are coming and taking places and investing and building new high-rise buildings. I don't think that there is a problem with Soviet legacy in Georgia. There is more problem about protection and having professionals who would take care of this Soviet or even non-Soviet or pre-Soviet heritage legacy. And why I am focused on this building is that it was this former Soviet army headquarters in Tbilisi, and it has certainly very negative history for the city, with lots of gossips, lots of horrible things happening there, and definitely it was related to Russian intervention in Georgia, because in Georgia we do not say that it was Sovietization, but we claim it's occupation and Russian intervention. After Soviet army left in 1993 from the building, it was already independent Georgia. The building got empty without care, quite in bad shape, and IDPs, internal displaced people from Abkhazia, they squatted the building. So it was squatted during, I don't know, maybe 20 years more. And after that, the bank, quite famous Tbilisi bank, the leader of which now is one of the leaders of opposition party, purchased the territory and building itself. And what this bank did, they just kicked out these IDPs from the building, appropriated the building, painted the facade with the St. George painting that you see now on the picture, the photo, and tried to sell it for several years, and finally, very successfully, they sold it for a quite high price, and now it's deconstructed, and now there is this huge complex of residential and commercial settings are appearing. So to conclude, I'm trying to say that it's not heritage that's disturbing, Soviet heritage that's disturbing, but it's commercialization of places and spaces that is more disturbing right now in Georgia. Oops. And one of my projects that I did related to Soviet heritage is this was during the Tbilisi Architecture Biennial. It was in 2018, where I tried to intervene in the place where I live. It's a residential house. It's where I live right now and where I am right now. And I did the project called Building Block 76. It's this building resides in the Soviet quarter that was built during the 1970s, and it was like workers' quarter that also was called sleeping quarter because it was basically for workers who were working in Tbilisi plants. And this is it's not near to the city center, and it's still stays as a workers' district. It's the only more or less protected Soviet urban area in Tbilisi without big intervention of new capitalist dystopian housing system. So my interest was to somehow make intersection of local Georgian and non-Georgian artists with my neighbors. So it took quite a long to work for this project. It took like 3 months to speak with my neighbors, to make them to turn their spaces into exhibition spaces for 2 days. And finally, from the 9-storied building, 7 families agreed, including me, and it was exhibition space for artists for 2 days, and we opened the doors to visitors from 4 till 6 p.m. for 2 hours. And I would say that it was quite successful. There were lots of visitors. There were like kind of interaction from artists with residents, but finally somehow for me it was not satisfactory. I did not feel this realization of the idea that I wanted to have this kind of not intervention, but smooth operation of artists with neighbors and with residents of the house. So anyway, it was intervention. It was like somehow, it was exotization and romanticization of the forgotten district with forgotten residents who maybe don't leave this district for the Tbilisi Center for Cultural Initiative. So To say the truth, finally, I did not felt myself very pleasant and realized from this exhibition. And I don't want to compare my this small exhibition with this new tendency of appropriation of Soviet buildings, but it's somehow this tendencies it takes place in Georgia right now, especially in the city and in the capital, that I would call intervention into past with not appropriation but self-colonization. So it maybe needs more discussion, but I would not. I don't want to disturb you more with my presentation. So, and one of this case of self-colonization is this huge construction campaign called Panorama Tbilisi. That is the one version of Russian soft colonization, new colonization of Georgia with these construction companies and also other business companies. And this Panorama Tbilisi is, according to Panorama Moscow, it takes place in the center of historic part of Tbilisi that date back from the 5th century after Christ, and it basically ruins the part of pre-Soviet and big part of Soviet heritage in center of Tbilisi, and because there is no rule for protection of cultural heritage from Soviet time, and because there is no master plan of the city, you see now on the photos this horrible development that really erases the traces of our cultural identity, either from Soviet or from pre-Soviet time. So, and meanwhile, in Georgia, with the new government from 2012, new monuments of Stalin appeared in some remote regions of Georgia, but in parallel with these new Stalin monuments, you see the project of some civil activists from Georgia called paint Stalin monuments, repaint the Stalin monuments. So this is a chaotic intervention that we have right now in terms of reconceptualization of Soviet era heritage and in parallel with self-colonization.
Not unseen also in the other parts of the so-called former East. Thank you, Lali. And we will hopefully revisit these practices of defacement further on in the Q&A session. But I will now have to give the floor to Kinga. And then after Kinga's presentation, I will already try to take questions from the floor and also combine them with a few maybe provocations or perspectives I have already prepared for you. So thank you, Lali.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kinga, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Do you see me? Okay. So I know we are late, but firstly, I really want to thank you very much for inviting me here because it's super interesting for me. But on the other hand, I need to mention at the beginning that I will be probably speaking from a slightly different angle because I'm not an art historian, I'm not an artist, I'm not memory activism, I'm just cultural studies scholar dealing with the issue of difficult heritage, as it were, on a daily basis, working at the Research Center for Memory Cultures. And maybe I will show you different examples of this kind of difficult heritage. And the second thought at the beginning is that I and my colleagues from the center deal with Poland and Central Europe in a broader sense. And in doing so, I guess there is another issue related to my presence here, because the category of post-Soviet is very ambitious in the geocultural context here. So we are interested in cultural areas on the eastern side of Iron Curtain, of course, and the areas that were politically influenced by the USSR after the Second World War. This is obvious, but at the same time, these are not strictly post-Soviet areas. Maybe it's obvious, but I wanted to say it loudly. And we were nevertheless less centralized in the period of post-war. Maybe we will talk about it later. And to be honest, we don't use the term post-Soviet to speak about our post-war heritage. We use the word communist heritage, communist architecture, sometimes Stalinist architecture, but the post-Soviet, it's not so frequent in our field of cultural studies here in Poland. I started to think about some exceptions, and I found one during our session, that we use the Soviet or post-Soviet only to name military cemeteries of Red Army. This is the only exception, I guess. But to the point and to my projects, I work in several projects, but today I want to say you about the project entitled Potential Histories of Central and Eastern Europe, in which I'm most involved in topic of post-Soviet heritage, architecture and art. The project is huge. It covers a variety of topics related to difficult heritage of region, from the issues of people histories to the environmental issues, but there is also a small part about architecture, space, and this is my topic. And today I won't go into details about the theoretical inspiration, because we don't have time. I just want to show you briefly some results of my research investigations, and they are about how we deal with the legacy of communists here in the Central Europe and Poland. However, firstly, I want to ask myself probably, what is difficult heritage in this context? Because firstly, we can think about the architecture of power, to use the Dejan Sujic term. For example, monuments to Lenin, or the monuments to October Revolution, etc., etc. We can include to this term monumental public buildings like parliaments, libraries, other facilities. But we also can include more utilitarian or everyday forms, like iconic forms of socialist modernism, such as hotels, train stations, community centers that were built during the post-war period, which seems to be more neutral at the first sight. Furthermore, when thinking about heritage, I asked in my research, do we only consider this part of heritage which is material in form, or do we also include the spaces after monuments, for example? Do we also should include empty spaces, this emptiness after the buildings or after the monuments? And of course, I think that this kind of space should be included in the research of difficult heritage of post-Soviet period in the area. But going further, I prepare to you some kind of classification. It would be similar to the previous speaker, some kind of classification of dealing with these objects, monuments, buildings, etc. And I need to share the screen. Do you see it? My screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the strategies of dealing with the post-Soviet / communist heritage in Central Europe and Poland. The first two strategies are quite obvious, I guess, because the first is the disappearance, the removal. Mostly in the early 90s in Poland and the Central Europe region. They are just disappeared from the public sphere. What is tricky here, they are still in the collective memory, because you can see here the site where the Lenin monument was in my city, in Krakow. And now there is, you can see just empty space, but people, usually the citizens, residents of Krakow, still use the Lenin as, the point of, they use that we are going to the central square. Now this is the name of this place is the Ronald Reagan Square. This is the official name, but we use the the name from the communist period, just the central square. Another example of it is something what I would say difficult presence in public space. You can see the Palace of Culture in the very, very center of Warsaw and the House of People in Bucharest, one of the biggest building on the world. Yeah, and they are problematic because we have here the never-ending discussion to demolish it or not to demolish. And to be honest, it's they are too big to get rid of it. It would be dangerous to the residents, to the city infrastructure. They have to stay on site, so to speak. And this kind of presence of these difficult building facilities is interesting for me because sometimes such places became the anti-monuments. Because firstly, the first intention, it was a typical to the phenomenon of architecture of power, to show the greatness of the Soviet Union, because the Palace of Culture, for example, is it was built in the gesture of friendship between Poland and Moscow. Yeah, so it was the symbol of. Yes, of friendship and the greatness. I said it already. But on the other hand, there are many, many cultural practices, initiatives that trying to to show the Palace of Culture as a symbol of communist oppressions. It stay with us, but it recall us the cruel history of the Poland, for instance. Yeah, you understand, I guess, because I'm I'm in hurry now, so maybe I'm skipping some thoughts. And there are some cultural production you can see here on my slide, books, which are about the Palace of Culture and the House of People. They the authors tell story of these buildings. They tells the story about for the victims, for example, because we can consider these buildings also like a kind of tombs, because there are some, bodies of people who died building these places. The second strategy is something that I called recontextualizations. Here in the picture we can see the railway station in Katowice, my hometown, and it was brutally very huge and monumental railway station, and there was a political initiative to demolish it, to build a center, shopping center there. And it happened, but after some interventions, the architects of this new space decided to include the parts of older building into this new building. Yeah, and you can see on the second photo the shops, yeah, the fashion shops here with these parts of former railway station. And another example of recontextualization is totally different. This is the Białystok monument. It was built to commemorate heroes from the region, mostly Soviet liberators of the region. And as you can see, this is a kind of socialist monumental architecture, but it was transformed by the addition of the very, very Polish patriotic slogan, God, honor, fatherland. Yes, so we have the monument which is devoted to the Soviet part of our history, but now this is totally changed to be the patriotic monument. Yeah. Another strategy is something I called historization, because this is the case of museums, museums of monuments, cemetery of monuments. So this is the Grutas Park in Lithuania and Memento Park in Hungary. And this is the open air museums where are collected all monuments which are from the streets of Hungary from Budapest. Yeah, so we can see, I don't know, 50 Lenins in one line walking through this Memento Park in Budapest. Yeah, so they are still in public space, but they are in museums, and these museums they are usually located far from the city. you need to take, I don't know, 3 buses or rent a car to get there. So this is maybe something significant in this context. Also, there is another example of Polish gallery of socialist realism art. It is located not in Warsaw, but in the very, very small village named Kozłówek, I don't know, 50 or 60 kilometers from Warsaw. There is no public transport there. You need to car to get there. And what is tricky, it is located in very, very bourgeois mansion in the palace from the 18th century. So this is a kind of hidden place. And the last one, and maybe the most related to previous presentation, is the artistic recontextualization, of course, which is maybe the most sophisticated, but probably less visible to the everyday experience of people, users of post-Soviet space. I have here 2 examples. One is from Yugoslavia. The story of Yugoslavia is a little bit different from our Polish or, I don't know, Czech history, but still Yugoslavian post-war socialist art is very interesting, very monumental, and very, I don't know, present in the public sphere. And here we have some intervention of Aleksandra Domanowicz. She called it Monument to the Revolution. It was presented in Marrakesh, and this is a kind of recontextualization of the monument of the partisan heroes from the Tito period. Yeah, probably you know the Joseph Broz Tito partisan stories and the story of establish the second Yugoslavia. So yeah, this is my they are results of my investigation. I investigated not only art practices, but also some cultural texts, narration about past, movies, these kinds of cultural production, and tried to catch some most distinguish elements of dealing with the past. And I forgot, but I have the last strategy. Sorry, because I'm in hurry and forgot about last slide. This is commercialization and at the same time depoliticization. I think that it was a trend evident in the last decade before the war in Ukraine. But there was, especially within the younger generation of users of the internet, for example, there was the trend towards socialist modernism, socialist design. It was a kind of fashionable to I don't know, take photo with this kind of monuments, to buy all these books, which are a kind of cultural production. It was cool, so to speak. But now I guess it started to be, of course, somehow, I don't know, not politically correct to show these kind of fascinations or interests artists in the past.
Right.
But I want to say that before the war, we could observe the process of depoliticization, because it wasn't considered in terms of politics, in terms of, I don't know, special hegemony of Soviet style. It was just nice, in fashion, interesting, etc., etc. Yeah, and
Nostalgie, I
yeah,
think. Nostalgie is the term that Germans came up with to denote this, and it seems it really is over, at least
yeah,
in
of
Poland.
course, yeah. So this is
Thank
the
you.
not actual example.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Kinga. I think we will still revisit these issues, and thank you for this categorization, and above all for, I think, diverting our attention from the heritage itself to how it is being recontextualized. So shifting from this frame of difficult heritage to contextualization, recontextualization. And this, I guess, is what we will address now in the second part. There are already two voices from the floor, one from Marina Dmitrieva, who wrote that Sergei Prokofiev got 6 Stalin Prizes, wrote a cantate on the Communist Manifesto, music about Alexander Nevsky, and she asks how to deal with it in the museum. Laure de Boutier, on the other hand, asks particularly Nikita Kadan how he relates to the presence of Russian influence or Russian capital in the institutional realm in today's Ukraine, and in particular in contemporary art museums. I would try to maybe wrap these questions in a larger one, which I would like to address both to Nikita and Zhenya. And I'll use one of the categories provided by Kinga. What do you think are now the biggest challenges to this work of artistic or cultural recontextualization of the Soviet heritage? And I would add one more. Do you know, in your own practices maybe, but also in other practices, some particularly successful attempts at doing just that in today's Ukraine? I don't know who'd like to take the floor first. Nikita?
Maybe I can start. Thank you very much for these questions. It's very interesting, and I'm be happy to answer, especially about this Stalin prizes. And before the full-scale invasion, the Memorial Museum worked a lot with this issue. Now the museum, of course, is evacuated because it's too close to the hostility line. But they before they had emphasized the fact that Prokofiev was so respected by the Stalin regime, but at the same time, his wife was a victim of a Stalin repression. And from the perspective of museum, they realized that their task to emphasize these complexities, and the task of all museums and the task of the policy of memory to work with such complexities and not to simplify the past in order to make it pleasant for everyone and to make it as something to be proud of, but to work with these complexities. And also there was a question about the Malevich and Kabakov, and it's also very important because in Ukraine official policy of memory, mostly of the officially recognized as Ukrainian, the most avant-garde period artists of the first time decades of Soviet time. They are recognized as Ukrainian by their place of birth. Even though some artists of that period manifested their Sovietness and were against some idea of national identity. However, artists of later periods who were born in Ukraine, unfortunately not recognized as Ukrainian officially now in Ukraine. And we recently had an exhibition, and now it's still ongoing in Essen, in frame of the Ruptured Triennial, and we included in our exhibition named Landscapes of an Ongoing Past. It's about traces of past and traces of past ideology, and of in nowadays. And we included a huge artwork of Kabakov in our exhibition. It's a work named Palace of Projects. It's a huge installation, which was bought by this Solferine, I don't know how, cultural foundation to their place. And so, of course, we faced the challenge how we can perceive this artist. I mean, Ilya and Emilia Kabakov. So the artist Ilya Kabakov was born in Ukraine and lived in Soviet and in the United States. So here somehow didn't have some connection with Russia, but of course he perceived as a Russian artist. And of course, for some Ukrainian participants, it was difficult to work with Russian artists because of the phenomenon of cancel Russian culture, which Nikita mentioned before. So for how we can perceive Kabakov, it was a question for us, but it was also the difficult heritage, because we discussed a lot and what we should do with this artwork and how we can conceptualize it. And actually, we have included his work in our exhibition, and it was it's torn from the uncomfortable heritage, but in the interaction with contemporary artworks, and it became a very important and critical point for understanding all this complexity of heritage.
Thank you, Zhenya. Nikita?
Arkadiusz, thank you. I read the questions, and regarding the first one, the artist with this multiple identity, artists which could relate to the different national contexts. You know, I start with one little idea to propose. Actually, one of the less recognized, even less mentioned, like Russian crimes against Ukraine is committed with big Ukrainian help. It's actually archaization of public discourse during the war. We are like trapped inside of the questions from, you know, like from early 19th century, which fit to maybe the context of romantic nationalism. And it's big problem that now plenty of intellectuals and artists as well, like they act like if they believed that there are homogeneous national cultures in this world, because public field is working like that, like ideology is working like that, mainstream media is working like that. All those who are called like leaders of public opinion, they act like that. And when I hear cancel Russian culture, my first question is like, which one exactly? I don't believe into any sort of like homogeneous Russian culture, not only because cultures of colonized nations are the parts. No, because distinction between like official and non-official is much more important. And when we deal with such figures as Ilya Kabakov, it's much more important to divide the role of official Soviet artists and role of non-official, and then next question, how it worked, like in Moscow, in Kiev, in Odessa, in Lviv. It worked differently everywhere. There was this phrase used by non-conformist Soviet intellectuals when in Moscow they cut nails, in Kiev they cut fingers. Like situation in Ukraine was much more oppressive, and many artists who would have no chance to act in Ukraine in a more like free-minded way, they could do it in Moscow. And next thing is very simple. Like artists can relate to several national projects and can be between different ethnicities, can be like Jewish and Polish, but live part of the life in Austro-Hungarian Empire, then in interwar Poland, and then in Soviet Ukraine, and die after German occupation, like Bruno Schulz. And now it's okay to say this about artists who are like Ukrainian and Polish, Ukrainian and Jewish, but about artists who are Ukrainian and Russian, saying this is kind of taboo. But this situation is not less realistic. And still there are figures in between. So I would rather avoid like treating them as like figures of struggle of ideologies or war of memories, and try to be more attentive to their own thoughts and ideas. And if artists like define themselves like as Kubo-futurist, like anarchist, conservative nationalist, queer person, and so on and so on, first thing is like self-definition. So with this attitude, I cannot be into cancel Russian culture project. Like I don't support it. But then I would like to step towards next question and maybe oppose myself a bit. I totally support canceling Russian institutions, canceling any structures related to Russian state, to Russian money, and this is an obvious wartime practical strategy which doesn't relate to any sort of like national essentialism. And I read a question about Garage Museum. My experience with this museum was quite long ago. They prepared an exhibition of 3 Ukrainian artists, Lada Nakoniechna, Mykola Ridny, and me. They prepared it during 2013. And during Maidan, actually we were ready to also exhibit our Maidan-related works and share our experience in Moscow. But after annexation of Crimea, we declined our participation. But still, and it was like my last visit to Moscow, we made a panel discussion and actually discussed why it is not possible anymore. Why there will be no business as usual. We did it in spring 2014. Yeah, we talked about like perspective of Cold War, just cold. But now it's not cold anymore. And since then, like our ties with the Russian art scene were cut. And later, I mentioned that Garage makes Russian Triennale, and silhouette of Crimea is on Russian map on the poster. The slogan was Russia you haven't seen before. And yeah, I read that they sent a little team of researchers to Crimea to find somebody. And there was an interview of curator Alexandra Abukhova, actually well-known, like elder generation Russian curator, active participant of like famous Moscow art actions of early 90s. And yeah, she came, she returned, and she told that actually there is no contemporary art in Crimea. Because due to dysfunctional cultural politics of Ukrainian state, there are no contemporary artists. But I remember when we made a group show called Disputed Territory in Sevastopol City Museum in 2012. There were Crimean participants, and on our symposiums and discussions, like plenty young people from like art college, from also different cities of Crimea, they came to Sevastopol to take part. But in 2014, like almost all these people, they packed their luggage and they went out. And in a year or something, Abukhova came and made her like conclusions. So yeah, Garage definitely should be out of international art life. That's clear. And Kabakov should not.
Thank you, Nikita. There are two comments which I think are important to be read in the chat box. Nilofur Farouk writes, "Thank you for the insights into preserving and recontextualizing the difficult post-Soviet or communist heritage. How dangerous is depoliticization and commercialization of heritage sites to conservation of historical memory?" And Kinga Siewior, I guess this was an add-on to Nikita, but also Zhenia's speech. She writes, "I would add that this in-betweenness is not only about nationality, but also about the fact that very often artists were both the main actors of the revolution in the art or cultural field and the victims of the revolution, considering the fate of the historical avant-garde." I think this is a very sober remark, so to speak, with respect to the 20th century history. Now, before we end, and unfortunately we will have to wrap up quite soon, I would like to direct one more question to Lali and to Sabina. We've been talking quite a lot about the ongoing war in Ukraine, practically all of the speakers have touched upon this subject. And towards the end of her speech, Kinga Siewior made a remark that for the Polish culture, the war, maybe not as much as for Ukraine, but in a very perceptible way, also became a certain break. For instance, a break with this commercialized nostalgia, this nostalgia for the former East. Now, I would like to ask both of you, to what extent does the war in Ukraine influence the cultural situation and especially the contemporary art production and the recontextualization of the post-Soviet heritage in your respective countries? And are there any other impulses, any other reasons for contemporary artists and cultural theorists and so on to tackle the subject of the Soviet heritage? Where does the inspiration come from? Is it the war in Ukraine? If so, to what extent? And are there other impulses nowadays in, say, the most recent years?
Maybe Lali will start.
Thank you, Sabina. Yes, actually, the war in Ukraine changed the local artistic scene a lot. It changed in terms of exhibitions, in terms of influence on contemporary art. The exchange between Georgia and Ukraine got more intense. We have a number of exhibitions, like now I'm inviting 2 Ukrainian artists for the residency, and it's just a kind of very intense relationship with contemporary artists now not living in Ukraine, but from Ukraine. And actually, now our public space is highly dominated also in Tbilisi with blue, yellow, and blue Ukrainian color. So it's public society in Georgia is really very much concerned and in the same way attached to Ukrainian reality. Not speaking the same about the government of Georgia right now. But we have like a common Ukraine and Georgia. It's kind of we have common ideology, and this ideology was formed through 2-3 centuries, based on a reaction against imperialistic and military interventions in our countries through ages. So, of course, and this is one side. Another side that is all Soviet republics, culture and art in former Soviet republics and even socialist countries, they have common ground called social realism. So there was this recession of social realism in early 90s that artists started to react on this cultural formation and started to get freedom from this social realism. But somehow it seems that the roots of this wave, it's still reviving and revives in Georgia. I have not researched nowadays implications of Soviet heritage on Georgian culture or in connection also to Ukrainian culture, but I would find it still a common platform for discussion between artistic circles in post-Soviet countries. And I don't know what to say more, but it is really topic of study how war affected cultural scene in Georgia, and it affected a lot. You will see lots of exhibitions now in Georgian galleries that are by Ukrainian artists. And also there is interest now in research of Ukrainian cultural like writers, like Lesia Ukrainka, or architects working and living in Georgia. But in what direction it will develop, certainly I do not know. I hope that the war will stop soon, finish soon, with winning, of course, the right side of the war, Ukraine, and I hope that it will take more intense interaction between Georgian and Ukrainian artists. It will develop more.
My turn, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So in Azerbaijan, war actually divided somehow divided the cultural society, cultural scene, art people, because the biggest part actually belong to official culture position and official people who belong to this position. They are following the governmental attitude, and as maybe you know, maybe not, Azerbaijan is keeping a political balance in this war situation, being still good in good economical and any kind of other relations with Russia, and the same time supporting in many issues the Ukraine from the economical and humanitarian and different positions. So, and this official part of the art people, they belong to this position, just neutral. But those ones who are having their own position, where the black is black and white is white, where the evil and it's different than the good things, and of course they're on the absolutely clearly on the side of the Ukraine. And for this group of people who are minority, of course, in this time became more important to be in the cultural artistic collaboration with Ukrainian artists. As an example, but these people, they are not on the support of the state. Even it's not easy to get a place to make an exhibition if they're artists who are supporting Ukraine side in this war. But there can be like international institutions. As an example, we made the exhibition, The Fog of War, where actually Nikita Kadan, his work was exhibited, the Monument of Shame. And there was another performance of another Ukrainian artist, Maria Kulikovska, live performance, where she was laying down under the flag of the Ukraine as someone who killed, and people were passing through this laying down on the floor figure, very strong work. And a lot of the officials, they and the official cultural people, they even couldn't come to this exhibition. I mean, this kind of separation, but still, as I'm telling, who are supporting the democratical movements in the world, who are supporting the truth in life and the light in life. So they of course, on the side of the Ukraine, and we are trying to be closer and working for some future projects. And at the same time, me and my colleagues and friends who think the same, we are boycotting many things which are in connection with the, we're seeing this as a Soviet communist continuation of the Soviet propaganda. And because of this, we are not involved in the many projects which are come from Russia. So we are openly boycotting it.
I understand that the extent of the influence is actually very, very remarkable. Thank you for these answers. And I wish we could discuss all of these issues much longer. Perhaps this webinar has been more of a conversation starter for ICA International and in particular the Fellowship Fund Committee. We've already addressed issues related to the ongoing war, as well as the Soviet heritage, for instance, during last year's ICA International Congress in Krakow. But definitely there is still a lot more to be discussed. Now, addressing some messages from the chat, Lorde Boutier asked for the references that all of the speakers have used to be shared. And I would suggest that you maybe send some valuable publications or links to your artworks, including the artworks that couldn't have been shown during the presentations, to me. I will then collect them and send a whole collection of links to the registered participants. Thankfully, we have all of your emails, so we will be able to reach you. Thank you all for for today's webinar. I also should note Daniel Perrier's question: can we help to preserve or re-establish historic truth? And I will put a twist on this question. If we can help with your initiatives, with your research, artistic, activist initiatives, and if you could also share some information about how to join, how to support, we would also be very grateful for this. I think on behalf of Daniel and all the other ICA people being here, I can definitely say this. Thanks to all of you, and I don't know if Karen maybe would like to add a couple of words.
Not really. I just wanted to say thank you. That was the most interesting, rich, intense discussion today. And thank you all for your time and the energy you put into your presentations. It was fabulous. And I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. Thank you.